What when Homeland Security is looking at cybersecurity risk, how are they thinking about it? And how should a company think about it? Because I'm sure they're
Yeah. Well, Homeland Security primary focus initially because was protecting the infrastructures, the finance, health, energy, et cetera, because it was really more of a state-sponsored attacks, and they still are going on with water and everything else too. And so that was the focus to get these industries to share threat information and to develop basic security against it. However, when dealing with the mom and pop shops and most medium-sized businesses, I think it's really just been education, cybersecurity awareness is what they're pushing, and it's not enough. It's good, I'd say it's good, but I think really shows like yours and others are really, it really has to come from the grassroots because it's really a lot of basics we can be doing to stop these kind of attacks and just a knowledge of what the threats are just to supply them. It's not, you don't have to be a sophisticated programmer or an expert. You just have to know what you need to do and what to protect. And so I think CISA encourages it, but they can't cover every 330 million people and tell them what to do, but they can protect the infrastructure or help protect it.
well. So a curious thing, if you look at CISA protecting the infrastructure I'm going to pick on the electric grid for a little bit. The distribution, the generation guys, those are mega companies, right? So
Yes.
they're putting money into even transmission those are pretty big operations. But there's a lot of distribution that's very localized, right?
Yeah.
That is where the
Grid is
rubber kind
very
of meets,
vulnerable.
yeah, meets the road. How does CISA even protect? There's a ton of them out there for a lot of distributors.
Well, you got a good point. I mean, 80% of critical infrastructure is not owned by the government; it's owned by private sector. And so, a lot of these agencies, nuclear's got NERC, they regulate, and the utilities self-regulate too, and they do stuff. But even the grid is owned; it's in three different parts. It's owned by state and local. It's owned by private. It's mixed, and so it's difficult to enforce it, particularly when most of the equipment's 30, 40 years old. And so, the hope is that security by design is you're building in now a better operational technology and in IT protocols into a lot of the new replacement of the equipment, but it's still quite vulnerable. So, maybe, the microgrids and other things are a solution, but it's not just vulnerable to cyber, it's vulnerable to sun flares, it's vulnerable to physical attacks. So there's a
Well,
lot
yeah,
of
if we had
problems.
what was that event in, the 1800s, a big solar flare that,
So the
shut.
Carrington event,
Yes,
yes. Yeah, it
if
took
we
out.
had
I
one
mean,
of
it
those.
took out pretty much all the electrical things. And if we had another one similar to that, a very, very little of our big areas are protected by for EMP. It could happen again, and it would be devastating. There are stuff that's reinforced, but priority things mostly for the government. But most industry, all these data centers and stuff are wide open for that. Just take them out.
Yeah, it would be terrible. I mean, back
Scary
then, the
scenario.
only
It's a scary scenario.
it is a very scary scenario. Who was it? It was Ted Koppel who wrote the book Lights Out, and one of the things he points out was one of the biggest problems would be just hygiene, because in the cities, if when you lose power, that's going to be the first thing to suffer, and it'll cause infectious diseases.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a study by a former head of CIA, Jim Woolsey, who said
Okay.
that it could
Yeah.
be, yeah, literally millions of people end up, because of those reasons, end up dying, food shortages, riots, all kinds of stuff. Just not even be able to drive a car, let alone that. So there's a lot of scary stuff. There was actually an EMP commission set up, I think it was 8 years ago, and nothing ever really happened since then. So maybe it gets revisited this time. I don't know. I think a lot of the stuff is better made now, but still, the EMP stuff is, and it's not only have to be from a flare. If a adversary detonated a nuclear bomb in the air over a city, it would have the same effects as the EMP waves knocking everything out. So there's a lot of scary things out there that we're dependent on our digital infrastructure. We need to look at it, everything, the digital, the physical, the black swan scenarios like we're talking about, and the implications of disease and famine and all that stuff that come with any kind of natural disaster. So this is a scary, scary world that way.